Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another of your spooky sessions. Now, I know I missed last week, so don't worry. This one is a little bit late, but at least it's here, and you will be getting another one in 2 days' time. So, not as if you've got long to wait in between episodes of I Made a Deal with an Angel. So, that's a plus. Anyway, tonight I'm not sure if it's a ghost story or something else, but I'll leave you to be the judge. So, then we have episode 11 of I Made a Deal with an Angel. And we'll see where we left off from last week. But to begin, I have this story for you, and it's called I'll Always Be Around You. So please sit back, relax, while I read to you I'll Always Be Around You. And I really do hope that you enjoy it. Cassidy lay in bed, staring up at the colourless ceiling, marked only by the stripe of light from the nearby street lamp. She let her eyes wander around the room filled with her toys, dolls, pretty furniture, familiar shapes blurred under the blanket of night. How lovely and wonderful they all were. But in moments like this, when she was alone, they only filled Cassidy with sad longing. Cassidy's young life seemed calculated to keep her alone. For one thing, she was her parents' only child. 10 years had passed since her birth, without even talk of having another child. And as far as she knew, adding to this, the family moved so frequently that putting down roots and forming solid relationships and friendships had proven impossible for a shy and quiet child like Cassidy. There were days when she absolutely ached for a playmate, but such a joy was rarely to be hers. She was just beginning to lose herself to the colourful, swirling images that would carry her off into slumber when she was yanked back to consciousness by a short, sharp noise. It came from the window directly beside her bed. For a moment, she simply lay there, wondering if what she'd heard was real. The tapping came again. 3 light but deliberate knocks at the pane of her window. Fear gripped her. What do I do? She asked herself. What could be out there? Dozens of horrifying possibilities danced through her mind, but all went blank when the knocking came again. In an instant, she made a decision. She would be brave and face whatever was outside of her window. After all, she began to think, how bad could it be? And if it were anything truly terrible, our parents were in the very next room and could be summoned with a scream. Taking a deep breath, she slowly lifted the shade. The sight that met her eyes was both confusing and unsettling. On the other side of the window, smiling broadly and waving, was a clown. Even in the pale yellow light of the street lamp, she could see that his face was slightly painted. What she could see of his clothes was colourful, raggedy patchwork. His wig almost made her want to laugh, as it resembled a 70s afro she'd once seen in a very old picture of her father. And to complement In really silly appearance, of course, the clown wore a bulbous, bright red nose. The clown tapped on the window again, and Cassidy understood that this meant she was to open it. Naturally, she hesitated. Nothing about this situation was normal. I must be dreaming, she reasoned. Strangely, this calmed her. The fear and uneasiness began to subside, giving way to confidence and a desire for play. She gripped the window tightly and slid it open. "Hi, Cassidy," said the clown in a funny put-on voice. "You know my name?" she asked. "Course I do," he said. "I know a lot about you." "Oh, yeah?" Cassidy challenged, narrowing her eyes. "Like what?" "Well," said the clown, forcing his face into an exaggerated frown, "I know you don't have any friends or any brothers or sisters, and that makes you feel like you're all alone sometimes." Cassidy felt the familiar longing in her heart once more. "Yeah," she said. The clown wiggled his head and smiled once again. "Well, cheer up, little Cassidy, because I'll be your friend." "You will?" Cassidy's eyes twinkled with joy. "Sure I will," said the clown. "And no matter what, I'll always be around you. Believe me, I'm going to keep a good eye on you." And as he spoke these words, he reached up and mimed pulling out his own eye and snapping it back into position. Cassidy giggled wildly at the absurdity of it all. When the routine was done, the clown laughed with her. And for a moment, they just giggled together, neither seeming to have a care in the world. Then the clown spoke again. "You know what I'll do?" he said. "What?" Cassidy wondered, eager to see what else he had up his sleeve. "I'll even leave you my nose as a promise of our friendship." And with that, he plucked the nose from his face and set it on Cassidy's windowsill. Immediately she snatched it up and squeezed the soft foam shape in her hands. "Thank you," she exclaimed. "You're welcome, Cassidy," said the clown. He looked at her and sighed, seeming quite content with himself and what had transpired. "Well, kiddo," he said at last, "it's getting pretty late, and a little girl like you needs her beauty rest." "But Mr. Clown," Cassidy protested, "I'm not even tired." But before she finished that sentence, a yawn escaped her throat, obscuring the last few words. The clown laughed, silently to himself this time. Now, he said, "don't worry. You go on to bed and have sweet dreams of all the games we'll play together." He gave her a toothy grin and added, "And I'll see you again real soon. Real soon." And so Cassidy said her last good nights to her new friend before closing the window and pulling the shade back down. Alone once again, she placed the clown's nose on her windowsill and laid her head back down on the pillow. And when Cassidy awoke, she could see the light that streaked in across her ceiling had switched from lamplight to sunlight. She stretched and sat up in her bed, feeling quite pleased. What a lovely little dream she'd had. She would have to tell her mother all about such an exciting and encouraging dream. Being a dream, of course, it didn't solve her loneliness problem, but at least it gave her hope. The more she thought about it, the funnier it became. Silly dream, she said to herself. How could a clown stand talking outside an 8th floor window? was only when she had surveyed the room that her blood ran cold. Sitting on the windowsill, just as she had left it, was the big red clown nose. What do you make of that? Was it just a dream? Was it real? What's the clown? Is it a ghost? Is it a demon? Is it some kind of other being? What are its intentions? Let me know what you think about it in the comments. So, now my friends, we come to our weekly serial of I Made a Deal with an Angel. And where were we left last time? Well, last time, Beelzebub, who we know was made of flies, horrible, horrible thing, fessed up on Lucifer and told him, as Lucifer's arch spy, that he'd found out that Asmodai and Sara were lovers. Not only that, but they were in love with each other. And as we all know, love is forbidden in hell. So Lucifer has sort of exacted some kind of deal with them, because if Asmodai doesn't stay loyal, he's promised Asmodai that he will kill Sara and it won't be painless. So that's a bit of an incentive for Asmodai to stay loyal. Not only that, but he's also found out that Belial has done a runner and is hoping to use Lord Ragnar's blood or something like that to gain footing onto Earth and to cause some kind of war there, which is obviously undoing all of Lucifer's plans for setting foot on Earth. So he's not very happy about that. So he wants to get to the bottom of who is loyal to him and who isn't. So with that in mind, he has appointed Lord Asmodai, the Lord of Wrath, and of course Lord of all his, hellish armies, and Sara as his new inquisitors. And they are going to ferret out who is loyal to Lucifer and who isn't. And all I can say is Lucifer helped them, the ones who aren't loyal. When you think about the sort of things that Lucifer can get up to. So with all that being said, I bring you episode 11. They do the creep up on you, don't they? Episode 11 of I Made a Deal with an Angel by Zithero. And I do hope you enjoy it. So, let's begin. Lucifer had made Asmodai and me in charge of rooting out anyone who wasn't loyal. We weren't terribly popular, as you can imagine. I found out some interesting things about my abilities, though. 1. I could use my enchantment on just about anyone, except for Fallen. Tried that on Abaddon, and he was super pissed. Mostly because Asmodai forced him to actually stand. Abaddon is apparently the avatar of sloth. 2. My powers even work on succubi. In the end, I think that this whole Inquisitor position may have been a punishment of its own, mostly because no other fallen were in cahoots with Belial, only a few greater demons in his armies. He played this very close to his chest, apparently. But I did pity those demons. I did. We had delivered them all to Lucifer, but I never saw any of them again after we did so. I remember one demon, Azazel. He apparently was one of the original demons, or as Lucifer called him, a day. Apparently that's what the race on Venus was. Azazel was about 6.5 feet tall, not counting the straight black horns. He would have been a burly guy if he'd been on Earth. His skin was red, his feet were like horses' hooves. He lacked a tail, but he did have bat-like wings. He was surprisingly what you'd expect of a stereotypical demon. I guess that's what a day looked like. A DEI? I'm not sure. Azazel had flown with us to the Blade of Pride, entirely under my enchantment. And when we landed, however, he started to act out of sorts. Hey, sweet cheeks, he flexed a bit, leering at me. When are you going to lay another one of those hot succubi kisses on me, huh? I narrowed my eyes. Okay, can we not and say we did? I snapped my fingers, breaking the enchantment. I didn't even have to seduce him for the first kiss. He was just a complete and utter slime ball. Asmodai was silent as he glared at Azazel. Azazel just shook his head for a moment when the enchantment wore off. Whoa, wait. Why are we at the Blade? Azazel pushed him forward. You have an appointment. Azazel stumbled forward and scoffed towards Asmodai, adjusting his clothing. Oddly, Azazel didn't wear armour. He wore a black pinstripe suit, black tie, and he had several blackened rings. The pants remained pinstripe tight, right up to his feet, turned to her furred hooves. And even then they were all expensive looking. No need to rough me up, big guy, I hear you. He walked forward. So what's this all about? Lucifer stood from his throne as Azazel walked through the archway into the throne room. Lucifer said, Not you too, Azazel. Me too what, my guardian? He said, kneeling with his fist to the ground, looking to the floor. Lucifer shouted now, his voice deafening. Do not take me for a fool! Belial's hand has been shown. Azazel sighed. Is this about the vault? Lucifer stormed up to Azazel. That whore behind you is not in Belial's service. She's an Asmodai's. I've been rooting out treachery against me. Azazel looked up, his expression pure shock. And they brought... What? They brought you before me, said Lucifer, which means you either have information or what was happening. Lucifer's wings straightened, and from it he pulled out a long feather. He slammed it down next to Azazel, and it cut right through the floor. It seemed hard as steel, if not stronger somehow. Azazel looked at the feather, and then to Lucifer, shaking. It's just, you have to admit, we've been down here a long time. When we first started the war, you promised you'd free Day and rule over all. Azazel shrugged. And it hasn't been quite a good ride. Belial gave me a better offer. If he succeeds, he'd pull me and my legion out of hell. Lucifer's breathing was even, slow, and calculated. Without warning, he started to laugh. Azazel smiled nervously, laughing along with him. It's kind of funny, right? Lucifer's laughter grew in tempo and tilted off the deep end of madness as he grabbed the feather. Do you know what's funny? Azazel slowly got to its feet. What's funny, my guardian? Lucifer shoved the blade through Azazel's chest. When Belial tries to summon you, you'll get nothing. Azazel grabbed at the feather sword in his chest, writhing. What do you... Lucifer grabbed Azazel by the head and started to saw the sword through him. Because for the first time in over a millennium, Lucifer looked him directly in the eyes, grinning wickedly. I'm going to destroy a soul. Azazel gasped. Wait, why not throw me in the pit or hang me for... Before Azazel could finish, Lucifer let go of his head, ripping the feather through him from chest to the top of his skull. A white light glowed out of Azazel, and what looks like a soul core came floating between his bisected cranium. Nefesh Haye He Evedati, Lucifer said as his feather is thrust through the small orb. It shattered into bits and pieces, and the remains of Azazel disintegrated into dust. An intense wind blew past us as he did this. Lucifer narrowed his eyes on the dust. Goodbye, my little one. Then he looked at both Asmodai and me. Was he the last of them? I nodded, looking to Asmodai, whose eyes were wide. Azazel is, he whispered. No more, said Lucifer simply. Do not think I hold reservations about doing that to your precious succubus. He walked toward the throne. Now get out of my sight. Your concern for her is sickening. We didn't linger. Asmodai and I had gotten back to the halls of wrath. For once he was still angry with me when we were inside. He grumbled as he removed his armour. Asmodai, do you want me to help you with that? He growls to me. It's fine. I handled fine before you arrived. I can handle it now. What's wrong? He narrowed his eyes. Lucifer destroyed Azazel and threatened to destroy you. And yet, despite that, I still cannot stop you seeing you kissing that lech. My jaw drops. Are you kidding me? Asmodai silent, though still fuming. You amazing jerk, I shout, trying to keep my insults tame because, well, he could eviscerate me at any moment. I was once under Belial. That means I was literally under Belial and countless other demons. You're angry about some kisses? That was when you were his. You're mine now. Asmodai heaves a sigh. Besides, Azazel seemed to genuinely enjoy it. I marched up to him, pushing against him as I do. Well, pushing my chest against him, getting to the tips of my hooves to try and get as close to his face as possible. I may be yours, but it's my lips that saved our asses, because you pulled your punches while we were in public. I poked him in the chest. And for your information, everyone enjoys it when I kiss them. That's the point. There was a moment of silence. I saw the green swirl in Asmodai's eyes, and I flinched as he roughly grabbed my hair, tilting my head back. In an instant, his lips were on mine, and his other arm was holding me tight against him. I shudder and kiss back, melting in his arms. He then forces me against the wall, pulling my armour off my legs and ripping through my underwear. I gasp, oh! I cry out in shock as he roughly thrusts into me. Oh, Asmodai, I gasp. He growls, you've been frustrating me all day, kissing everyone you please. You need a reminder that you're mine. He continues his rough treatment of me, and I'll be honest, I'm not one to complain in the least. While pinned, I do manage to pull him close for some light kissing, but he's mostly just a mechanical bull now, thrusting into me with power and rage and taking all his frustrations out on me. While I prefer our more intimate and softer moments, I can't say I'm not enjoying myself. Maybe I was delirious from the mind-blowing power Asmodai was pouring into me, but as we neared our climax, I just cried out, oh yes, oh Asmodai, I love you. I collapse on his shoulder, shivering in the afterglow. Asmodai slowly lets me down, sitting me on his lap, my legs around his waist and my arms draped over his shoulders. You too. I catch my breath, blushing. I what? Asmodai's face twists oddly, and he whispers into my ear, I love you too. I nuzzle into the crook of his neck. You just got frustrated, huh? Asmodai nods. You sure you're not the avatar of envy? He chuckles a bit, stroking my hair. I won't lose you, Sara. I smile to him and kiss him softly. I am not going anywhere. Don't make promises you can't keep. It was a few weeks later when some kind of insane commotion occurred at the Blade of Pride. A huge swelling vortex of dark clouds was hanging over the balcony, with a rumbling sound of trumpets and a choir of sweet voices filling the air. Asmodai is wearing a great big grin as he looks out over the Blade of Pride. Want to watch? I frown. Watch what? Belial getting his comeuppance? And then that's how he explained. A smile that is legitimately evil crosses my face. I want to go right now. When Asmodai and I landed at the Blade of Pride's balcony, Lucifer was already waiting. Lucifer's smile was downright vicious. Bring him to me already. A massive black creature dropped from the vortex. It had voluminous scaled wings that blotted out the sky and an endlessly long scaled black tail. Around its enormous head swirled a pair of short white horns. A long neck sprouted out of its broad shoulders, and its chest and both of its feet were giant lizard-like claws. Shining armour covered its legs, continuing up to its monstrous body, up to its lizard-like maw, over its broad chest and down its heavy arms. Each hand was scaled and clawed, and one of them grasped Belial's neck. Lucifer grins as he greets it. Brother Enoch. My, it has been a long time. Enoch snorts. You left this one on the wrong plane. He drops Belial before Lucifer. So I did. Lucifer slowly walks round the black creature. How is father? Well, I hope. A sound that almost like singing grows from his throat. However, it sounds like angry singing. Father is well. Your great-grandson, quite the inspiration. Lucifer smiles as he walks over to Belial, grabbing him by the scruff of his neck. "My lord," Belial wheezes. "Silence," Lucifer growls. "The adults are talking." Enoch's tail swishes back and forth in agitation. "My great-grandson is none of your business." Lucifer chuckles. No, of course not. But our great-granddaughter is, well, my granddaughter. Lucifer corrects, grinning wickedly. "What does that make us, brother?" Enoch's tail slams on the balcony. "Your blood will not corrupt her as you think it will." Lucifer starts to chuckle and then begins a hearty laugh, which transitions to maniacal laughter. Enoch looks up, then turns to me, frowning. I see no pupils in his eyes, just a soft white glow from empty sockets. Lucifer's laughter dies down. "Yes, look at that one. I corrupt all, Enoch. Nothing is safe from me. Not your guardian angels, not your children, not theirs after that." Enoch looks away and whispers, "You will not win." Lucifer grins. "Enoch, don't be foolish." He changes his grip to Belial's throat and tightens it, smiling proudly. "I've already won." Enoch merely jumps into the vortex. Before it closes, Lucifer shouts, "Give my regards to Father. Tell him his terror will burn beautifully once again. This time, the fires will be twice as hot." The vortex closes, but I'm pretty sure I can still hear a choir of some sort. Lucifer then looks to Belial. "Belial, please, you appear tired from your arduous journey. Let's take a load off those tired bones of yours and have a nice chat about your trip," Lucifer says jovially. Belial winces and grunts as he's dragged into Lucifer's throne room. I follow without invitation. Lucifer stops to look at me. "Why are you here?" I look to him and without blinking, I blurt out, "I want to watch Belial suffer." Lucifer smiles and looks to Asmodai. "You're rubbing off on our Asmodai. I like it. Come along, you vengeful little minx. You can have your front row seat." Belial objects, wheezing. "No, you and I can discuss this in private." Lucifer laughs loudly. No, brother, not at all. Why spare anyone the lovely conversation we are to have?" He hurls Belial before the throne, where he lands flat in his face. Lucifer holds out his hand, black mist swirling around his hand before a huge sword appears in it. The blade's tip clashes down on the ground and cracks it, and as it does, I swear I can hear faint screaming. The sword is almost as long as Lucifer is tall, and the massive blade has a fuller running from a few inches below the tip to the hilt. The hilt is huge. It looks like a single cross, but the cross guards appear to into each other into an angular wing. I realise the rain guard of the sword looks like a beak biting into the blade, as if the sword of exiting the beak itself. The pommel of the sword has a Nazi swastika for some reason. Belial's eyes grow wide. "Why, my lord, you've drawn the Puriel blade." Lucifer swings the sword and points it to Belial's throat, the tip cutting his skin slightly. "Why, oh why indeed?" Belial, explain yourself. Belial gasps as the blade touches his skin. I plan to take Tara for myself. He seems short of breath for some reason. Lucifer inhales slowly through his nostrils. Do you know what I've done to Mammon? Belial winces as the sword digs a little deeper into his throat, the skin around it blackening, while veins along his skin and throat seem to turn black or purple. He appears to be in great pain. I assumed something inappropriate. Lucifer pulls the blade back from his throat. I'm extremely unsurprised, Belial. I suppose all of these eons you've been faithful were, well, I guess to lull me into a sense of false security. But I have purged the entire hellscape of your treachery, and we have found every one of your conspirators. He smiled. Unluckily for you, they shared your loyalty. Lucifer places the sword to Belial's shoulder. By all logic, I should transubstantiate you now, and hurl your newly minted mortal soul into lakes of fire, to be broken into a soul core that I would then have Sapnock smith into a toothpick. Lucifer leans down to be eye to eye with Belial, but that would be a waste of effort. Thank you, my lord, Belial wheezes, his hand on his throat, as even more veins along his face turn black. It's like poison spreading through him. Lucifer grins wickedly. Oh no, Belial, do not thank me yet. He walks to his throne. Belial turns slowly. I'm not sure what you mean, my lord. He's looking woozy and unsteady, even on his knees, and his face looks paler than normal. Lucifer speaks slowly. Petura infamante, he says simply. Suddenly, from the black void of the ceiling, several ropes fly downward, wrapping around Belial's legs and hoisting him up into the air. My master! Wait, no, you don't need to do this. Belial is now hanging upside down by his feet, unable to undo the ropes on his feet, but desperately trying to do so. As he struggles, blood leaks from his mouth and eyes as the blackened veins on his face spread further and further across. The ropes tighten and then do something odd, looking as if they are fusing with his legs. Belial screams, his eyes rolling into the back of his head as blood runs out of his eyes. Reflect on this pain, Belial. Reflect, surrender, and consider breaking some of your old habits. Lucifer leans back in his throne as suddenly Belial's movements halt entirely. I think a century is a fitting punishment for you to remain in accelerated suspension. Belial's hands move behind his back, and he disappears into the ceiling as his screams die down. The blood on his face freezes, blackens, and then looks like it hardens immediately. My eyes grow wide. As Belial is hoisted into the air, I suddenly see there are hundreds of others suspended from the ceiling. Each is in a frozen state of screaming, their faces contorted in suffering. Some have both legs tied together. Others have a single leg with one free lax, sometimes hanging off their body, looking as if it's about to fall off. No one has blood on their face or blackened veins like Belial. Lucifer interrupts my horror with a sigh. Oh, the price to pay for being a traitor. Those have been up there even longer, Despite my saying so, only a few years will pass here. But to them, he smiled at the ceiling, to them hundreds of lifetimes are passing, with them hanging, dying, and being hung again. Belial will experience his defeat on Terra, and down here in an endless loop for a century, all in the span of a year's time. I swallow hard. It's fitting, my lord. Lucifer snaps his fingers again, and the image of a younger girl from before is shown. She's using a training sword against a boulder, and the boulder breaking as she hits it with almost impossible force. I figure to ask, my lord, who is that girl? Lucifer grins, flipping the image. My granddaughter. Her name is Zithero. Looking the girl over, I notice she has black hair and purple eyes. She has your eyes, my lord. I see you noticed, he grinned. As I recall, the granddaughter of Enoch was shown to us before when Belial's plan was first found out. I start to wonder how there's a granddaughter between them, if both have only daughters. My lord, if you don't mind, may I ask how this girl is your granddaughter? Lucifer grins. My daughter's quite brilliant, isn't she? She's a lesbian herself, and unable to conceive a child on her own. He leant back into his throne. But through a debasement of science and natural law, she managed to sire a child with Rachel, granddaughter of Enoch. He laughed. Our houses joined, and the first cherubim born without God's consent has been made. The little girl's training sword breaks, and out of frustration, she smashes her fist on the boulder, shattering it to bits. Such power, Lucifer says proudly. I swallow hard. Your daughter must be proud, my lord. Lucifer's face falls slightly. Unfortunately, she doesn't know of the girl's existence yet. Oh, so she's growing up without her mother? Lucifer nods. Well, one of two, but yes. I'm sure you can relate. Lucifer motions for me to come closer. I will end you should you share this information. You understand, yes? My stomach drops and I fall to my knees. Yes, my lord. Lucifer leans back and waves his hand. A picture of a woman at a bar materializes. She's got long black hair, half of it buzzed off, and massive white wings sprouting out of her back. She wears a tank top of sorts that does little to hide the massive burly muscles that make up her arms. In her hand is a bottle of some kind of hard liquor. Her head rests on the bar now. She is heaving heavily and alone. I hate love, Lucifer says. It worms its way into the strongest of us, and when it leaves behind nothing but a hollow shell of what they once were. Another image materializes, a scene of the same woman swinging a pair of swords through countless other angels. There's no sound, but she is laughing, blocking blades with one hand and shattering shields, swords, and bone with the other. Blood sprays from the slaughtered angels, and she appears to be laughing maniacally as she slays them. At some point in this gruesome scene, she shoves the two swords into a pair of angels, then reaches behind her to draw a massive claymore with a clear blade like a diamond. She takes it in both hands, turns her stance, and swings it like a golf club, slicing a huge gash into the floor and bisecting 3 angels in one strike. Lucifer motions to the first image, which now shows her drinking from a fresh bottle. from destroyer to drunk, all over a woman. He growls, his fist clenching. All for love. Disgusting, filthy, degrading love. He glares at me. I'm also burdened by it. I can see, but I cannot console, cannot touch, cannot do anything but watch her waste away. I frown. I am so sorry, my lord. I know you feel similarly, not being able to see how your family is, being helpless. He sighs, waving the images away. Be happy that you are currently in my favour. Without you, I would still question the loyalty of my generals. But now I know where I stand. Lucifer drops the puerile blade, and it vanishes into a puff of black smoke. Go on, Sara. Go to your lover. These matters are done for now. I nod to him. Thank you, Lord Lucifer. As I get up, I look at the hanging people and back to him, speeding my way out. Right before I leave, I hear Lucifer's voice. Oh, one last thing. I turn to face him again. Yes, my lord? Sara, you are to train the succubi to fight. I bow. It would be my honour to serve you. Lucifer merely dismisses me with a wave and leans back into his throne. Asmodai is chuckling. I enjoyed hearing him beg. We should go, I whisper. I trained with forecasts more over the years. In turn, I trained the other succubi. We had broken it down to 1 a week session, where I would have them spar against each other. Eventually, Belial was released and Kaironisa was rather pissed. She had been running things pretty well on her own. She'd even gotten all the succubi armour and weapons like mine, although most of the others preferred whips. Belial wasn't pleased about that, but he had little choice in the matter. For the most part, at least I was well behaved. Asmodai led a pretty nice afterlife. It sure as hell wasn't pleasant, to say the least. Hell is hell, after all, but having someone to share it with was nice. Asmodai was hard on me when we were outside, but I was harder on him when we were in private to make up for it. It was a few years later when I discovered I had a new ability of sorts. While training with forecasts, he was getting pretty touchy about my form. Your riposte is horrid, he said simply. He stood across from me. Strike at me, forward. I grumbled in complaint. But we've been at this for hours. And yet it seems you cannot riposte. Now I will show you. Strike. When I thrust my sword at him, he parried my sword and lunged at me, striking my shoulder. See? Again. We repeated this 5 more times, and he kept hitting the exact same spot. Finally, the 6th time I grabbed the training sword. I'm fuming, and I feel a sudden surge of strength rush through me. I feel more and more angry by the second, and I snap the training sword. I charged at him, shoving my training sword into his shoulder. How do you like it, eh? How's my riposte now? I realise my voice is echoing somehow, and everything seemed tinged in green. Forecast then thrust his training sword to my throat, his foot on the back of my head. Down, girl! This just gets me even more agitated, and I feel another surge of strength through me. I pushed myself up enough to remove Focus's foot, and I tackled him to the ground, squeezing him tightly. I'm trying to squeeze the life out of him, or break something. It's hard to tell, as I'm in a rage. Forecast grunted, struggling. Sara! I barely hear what he says, and I redouble my efforts in snapping him in half. Forecast's eyes glowed white for a second, and I felt dizzy. I shook my head and rammed my horns against his forehead. Forecast managed to pull himself out of my grip, and I charged at him again. Forecast blocked my horns with his sword. Sara, enough! I'm pushing with all my might, and I feel even more strength coming the angrier I get. Suddenly, Asmodai's arms were under mine, and he's holding me tight to his chest as I writhed and kicked. I shouted and snarled some unintelligible curses and slurs while I'm busy being held. Eventually, I calmed down, heaving in Asmodai's arms. Forecast got up, dusted himself off, and said, "She went berserk." Asmodai released me. I grunted as I fell to the ground. I couldn't control it. I heard a sword being drawn. Forecast frowned. "My liege, please show some mercy. Our actions were not our own." I turned round only to get a sword shoved into my chest. I coughed, blood spurting out of my mouth. "This is mercy, Forecast." Asmodai glared at me. "Do not strike your trainer, harlot." He pulled out the blade and I fell forward, more blood gushing from my throat as I gasped for air. I fall to the ground, convulsing, as Asmodai walked away. When Asmodai was out of sight, Forecast leaned over me and placed his hand on my wound. Ensuring no one is looking, he started to heal the gash in my chest. After a few minutes, I've coughed up all the blood I can. Forecast leaned me up against an armour rack. "You all right?" I grumbled. "The answer to that is never going to be. I'm super thanks for asking, you know." Forecast stood, sighing. "We're done for today, then." I managed to get up on my hooves. "I'm sorry for charging at you." Forecast frowned. "I did not want to hurt you by fighting you off. Your master seems less concerned with such things." I looked down. "Well, yeah, he's my master, so..." "Indeed," Forecast sighed. "Be safe, Sara, until our next session." I walked back into the halls of Wrath, finding Asmodai in the bedroom, cleaning the sword he had run me through. He looked to me mournfully. "I do not like this still." I settled next to him, moving his hand away from the sword. "It's what we have to do. I will suffer an eternity of pain to be with you." I kissed him softly. Asmodai returned it. "So I'm doing well, yes?" I nodded. "Yes, well enough where Forecast seems to think you're mistreating me." Asmodai laughed, pulled me close as we lay down on the bed. As I lay with him, I was less than pleased, but I just closed my eyes and reminded myself, this is probably as good as I can get here. I've just got to accept that. It was several years after this, 10 after Belial's failed coup, that something weird happened again in hell. Throughout the fields, the caverns, and all of the various lands, we all heard a voice chanting some weird dark words. Asmodai was looking out of the window as it happened. At the time I was dressing, my armour ball sitting patiently on the nightstand by the bed. I was adjusting my corset, and I said, "What's going on out there?" Asmodai looked at me as I wiggled it myself into my thong. "Not sure. Sounds like a summoning ritual, but I've not heard one of those in over 300 years. I frown. Belial isn't up to anything again, is he? Asmodai shakes his head. It's too weak to summon forth a fallen. Maybe some lesser demon is being summoned as a familiar. Lucifer's voice then rang out over all of hell. Denizens of hell, hear my command. I walk to the window, leaving my armour, listening closely. One of you is being summoned. I know not who, but know this. Whoever is summoning you, your first task is to kill them, or entrance them to release you. Do not be bound to their will. When free, your only goal is to break the seal on the gates of hell. Today we have been given the key. His voice echoes through the air. You will be that key to unlock the gate. Ready yourselves. Prepare, for soon we will destroy all of his works. There's cheering, shouting, screaming, and roars of all kinds occurring all over the place. Through it all, however, Asmodai's eyes are narrowing as he listens to the summoner's voice. What is he? I frown. What's wrong, Asmodai? A voice rings throughout the caverns. I, Munda, shall call forth the brute of the underworld, the Lord of Wrath. And here ends episode 11. And next week, in part 12, we'll find out what happens next. Well, it won't be next week, it'll actually be Friday, but you know what I mean. So, what do you think of that? What did you think of your stories tonight? Oh, and from what I can remember, I believe that part 12 is the final episode of I Made a Deal with an Angel. If I'm right, of course, you see, I know where it is, so yeah. Next week, well, Friday, is your final episode, and then we move on to the next series, series 2. But I'll tell you all about that in 2 days' time. But I had a feeling there was 12 episodes in this. So, yeah, a couple of days' time. That's all you've got to wait until the next one. So, ooh, it's all hotting up. And soon we're going to get to the bits that are similar to Supernatural. Similar, but, you know, obviously very much Zithero's own work. But you'll see what I mean when I start reading it to you. Anyway, what did you think of tonight's stories? Did they spook you out a little? Did they make you shiver? Did they make you think? What do you think about clowns? Do you like them? Do they scare you? Do you just find them irritating? Do you want to punch them in the face when you see them? I don't like them. I know my daughter never liked them, and my son was absolutely terrified of them when he was little. Absolutely terrified. I know an awful lot of children who find them very, very scary. And of course, don't ask me to watch it or Pennywise, because I can't. I absolutely can't. They're awful. And then Sara and Asmodai. What about those two? Yeah, so, and Belial's only been tortured for 100 years. Personally, I would have had him tortured a lot longer than that, because he's never been particularly nice, has he? But we're about to find out more about granddaughters and great-granddaughters, and it can get a bit confusing if you're not, really concentrating on the story. Or even if you are concentrating on the story, it still gets confusing. Anyway, my dears, I'd like to thank you very, very much again for being here. And thank you very, very much for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed both of tonight's stories. Please let me know what you thought of them in the comments. And we'll have a chat about them there. And like I said, you'll have another spooky sessions in a couple of days' time. So not long to wait. So, and I'm happy I'm sort of back in the saddle, so to speak. So until then, please take care of yourselves, stay safe, and just, if you don't need to go out, don't go out. Just do what people tell you to do. Think about your hospital services, because they are the ones who need our support right now. So, by doing as we're told, we're helping them. They are on the front line, so that those of our loved ones who are ill and that are on the road to recovery, it's all because of the hospital workers. It's all down to them. And when all of this is over, we will be in their debt forever. So I'm going to wish you a very peaceful good night. As for me, it's the start of Passover. But unfortunately this year, we can't go anywhere to celebrate Passover. We have to have it at home, but we can't get a lot of the ingredients that we would need. So it's quite difficult trying to celebrate Passover, or Pesach, as we call it, and to have a Seder. It's pretty difficult. But there's always next year. That's the way I look at it. Anyway, thank you again. I love you all. And I want to wish you a very, very happy and peaceful good night. Take care and good night.